Hi, third grade. It's Miss Lamb. I bet you weren't expecting to see me this week because I told you it was spring break. Just kidding. Spring break is definitely next week. But I've been in the house so much that all the days are running together kind of. And so I thought it was this week, but JK, it's definitely next week. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through James and the Giant Peach again today. We might actually finish it by the end of the week. And then I'll teach you some new science stuff, and we'll go over some of the math. And then I have some reading curriculum that I can do with you. After that, TBD. We'll see how it goes. But right now, chapter 18 in James and the Giant Peach. Here we go. A minute later, they were out in the open, standing on the very top of the peach near the stem, blinking their eyes in the strong sunlight and peering nervously around. Do you remember, boys and girls, they didn't know where they had landed? They were kind of worried about what they would find, so they went out the top instead of the side. What happened? Where are we? But this is impossible. Unbelievable. Terrible. I told you we were bobbing up and down, the ladybug said. We're in the middle of the sea, cried James. And indeed they were. A strong current and a high wind had carried the peach so quickly away from the shore that already the land was out of sight. All around them lay the vast black ocean, deep and hungry. Little waves were bibbling against the side of the peach. But how did it happen, they cried. Where are the fields? Where are the woods? Where is England? Nobody, not even James, could understand how in the world a thing like this could have come about. Ladies and gentlemen, the old green grasshopper said, trying very hard to keep the fear and disappointment out of his voice, I'm afraid that we find ourselves in a rather awkward situation. Awkward? Cried the earthworm. My dear old grasshopper, we are finished. Every one of us is about to perish. I may be blind, you know, but that much I can see quite clearly. Off with my boots, shouted the centipede. I cannot swim with my boots on. I can't swim at all, said the ladybug. Nor can I, wailed the glowworm. Nor I, said Miss Spider. None of us three girls can swim a single stroke. But you won't have to swim, said James calmly. We are floating beautifully, and sooner or later a ship is bound to come along and pick us up. They all stared at him in amazement. Are you quite sure that we're not sinking? The ladybug asked. Of course I'm sure, answered James. Go and look for yourselves. They all ran over to the side of the peach and peered down at the water below. The boy is quite right, the old green grasshopper said. We are floating beautifully. Now we must all sit down and keep perfectly calm. Everything will be all right in the end. What absolute nonsense, cried the earthworm. Nothing is ever all right in the end, and well you know it. Poor earthworm, the ladybug said, whispering in James's ear. He loves to make everything into a disaster. He hates to be happy. He is only happy when he is gloomy. Now isn't that odd? But then I suppose that just being an earthworm is enough to make a person pretty gloomy, don't you agree? If this peach is not going to sink, the earthworm was saying, and if we are not going to be drowned, then every one of us is going to starve to death instead. Do you realize that we haven't had a thing to eat since yesterday morning? By golly, he's right, cried the centipede. For once, the earthworm is right. Of course I'm right, the earthworm said. And we're not likely to find anything around here either. We shall get thinner and thinner and thirstier, and we shall die a slow and grisly death from starvation. I am dying already. I am slowly shriveling up for want of food. Personally, I would rather drown. But good heavens, you must be blind, said James. You know very well I'm blind, snapped the earthworm. There's no need to rub it in. I didn't mean that, said James quickly. I'm sorry, but can't you see that... See! Shouted poor earthworm. How can I see if I'm blind? James took a deep, slow breath. Can't you realize, he said patiently, that we have enough food here to last us for weeks and weeks? Where? They said. Where? Why, the peach, of course. Our whole ship is made of food. Jumping Jehoshaphat, they cried. We never thought of that. My dear James, said the old green grasshopper, laying a front leg affectionately on James's shoulder, I don't know what we'd do without you. You are so clever. Ladies and gentlemen, we are saved again. We are most certainly not, said the earthworm. You must be crazy. You can't eat the ship. The only thing that's keeping us up. We shall starve if we don't, said the centipede. We shall drown if we do, cried the earthworm. Oh dear, said the old green grasshopper. Now we're worse off than before. Here is where the green grasshopper is like putting one of his legs around James's shoulder. Couldn't we just eat a little bit of it? Asked Miss Spider. I'm so dreadfully hungry. You can eat all you want, James answered. It would take us weeks and weeks to make any sort of a dent in this enormous peach. Surely you can see that. Good heavens, he's right again, cried the old green grasshopper, clapping his hands. It would take weeks and weeks. Of course it would. But let's not go making a lot of holes all over the deck. I think we'd better simply scoop it out of that tunnel over there, the one that we've just come out of. An excellent idea, said the ladybug. What are you looking so worried about, earthworms? The centipede asked. What's the problem? The problem is, the earthworm said, the problem is that there is no problem. Everyone burst out laughing. Cheer up, earthworm, they said. Come and eat. And they all went over to the tunnel entrance and began scooping out great chunks of juicy golden-colored peach flesh. Oh, marvelous, said the centipede, stuffing it into his mouth. Delicious, said the old green grasshopper. Just fabulous, said the glowworm. Oh my, said the ladybug primly. What a heavenly taste. She looked up at James and she smiled, and James smiled back at her. They sat down on the deck together, both of them chewing away happily. You know, James, the ladybug said, up until this moment, I have never in my life tasted anything except those tiny little green flies that live on rose bushes. They have a perfectly delightful flavor, but this peach is even better. Isn't it glorious, Miss Spider said, coming over to join them. Personally, I'd always thought that a big, juicy, caught-in-the-web bluebottle was the finest dinner in the world, until I tasted this. What a flavor, the centipede cried. It's terrific. There's nothing like it. There never has been, and I should know because I personally have tasted all the finest foods in the world. Whereupon the centipede, with his mouth full of peach, and with juice running down all over his chin, suddenly burst into a song. And there he is eating his peach. I've eaten many strange and scrumptious dishes in my time, like jellied gnats, dandy-prats, and earwigs cooked in slime, and mice with rice. They're really nice when roasted in their prime, but don't forget to sprinkle them with just a pinch of grime. I've eaten fresh mud burgers by the greatest cooks there are, and scrambled dregs and stink bugs' eggs, and hornets stewed in tar, and pails of snails and lizard tails and beetles by the jar, a beetleism proved by just a splash of vinegar. I often eat boiled slobbages, they're grand when served beside, minced doodlebugs and curried slugs, and have you ever tried mosquitoes' toes and wampfish roes, and most deliciously fried? The only trouble is that they disagree with my inside. I'm mad for crispy wasp stings on a piece of buttered toast and pickled spines of porcupines, and then a gorgeous roast of dragon's flesh, well hung, not fresh, it costs $1 at most, and comes to you in barrels if you order it by post. I crave the tasty tentacles of octopi for tea. I like hot dogs, I love hot frogs, and surely you'll agree. A plate of soil with engine's oil, a super recipe. I hardly need to mention that it's practically free. For dinner on my birthday, shall I tell you what I chose? Hot noodles made from poodles on a slice of garden hose, and a rather smelly jelly made of armadillo toes. The jelly is delicious, but you have to hold your nose. Now comes, the centipede declared, the burden of my speech. These fools are rare beyond compare. Some are right out of reach. But there's no doubt I'd go without 1,000,000 plates of each for one small mite, one tiny bite of this fantastic peach. Everybody was feeling happy now. The sun was shining brightly out of the soft blue sky, and the day was calm. The giant peach, with the sunlight glinting on its side, was like a massive golden ball sailing upon a silver sea. Chapter 19. Look, cried the centipede just as they were finishing their meal. Look at that funny thin black thing guiding through the water over there. They all swung around to look. There are 2 of them, said Miss Spider. There are lots of them, said the ladybug. What are they? Asked the earthworm, getting worried. They must be some kind of fish, said the old green grasshopper. Perhaps they have come along to say hello. They are sharks, cried the earthworm. I'll bet you anything you like that they are sharks and they have come along to eat us up." "What absolute rot," the centipede said, but his voice seemed suddenly to have become a little shaky, and he wasn't laughing. "I am positive they are sharks," said the earthworm. "I just know they are sharks." And so, in actual fact, did everybody else, but they were too afraid to admit it. There was a short silence. They all peered down anxiously at the sharks who were cruising slowly around and around the peach. "I just assume they are sharks," the centipede said. "There still can't possibly be any danger if we stay up here." But even as he spoke, one of those thin black fins suddenly changed direction and came cutting swiftly through the water right up to the side of the peach itself. The shark paused and stared up at the company with small, evil eyes. "Go away," they shouted. "Go away, you filthy beast." Slowly, almost lazily, the shark opened his mouth, which was big enough to have swallowed a perambulatory. I'm not sure exactly what that means. And made a lunge at the peach. They all watched aghast. And now, as though a signal from the leader of the other sharks came swimming in toward the peach, and they clustered around it and began to attack it furiously. There must have been 20 or 30 of them at least, all pushing and fighting and lashing their tails and churning the water into froth. Panic and pandemonium broke out immediately on the top of the peach. "Oh, we're finished now," cried Miss Spider, wringing her feet. "They will eat up the whole peach, and then there will be nothing left for us to stand on, and they'll start on us." "She's right," shouted the ladybug. "We are lost forever." "I don't want to be eaten," wailed the earthworm. And here they are. There are the friends up on top of the peach, and there are those sharks circling down below. And even though it's a very, very big peach, still, I bet it wouldn't take very much time for all of those sharks, and you can see how many there are with the fins in the water like that, to do some real damage to that peach. Yikes. "But they will take me first of all because I'm so fat and juicy and I have no bones." "Is there nothing we can do?" asked the ladybug, appealing to James. "Surely you can think of a way out of this." Suddenly they were being looked at. They were all looking at James. "Think!" begged Miss Spider. "Think, James, think." "Come on," said the centipede. "Come on, James. There must be something we can do." Their eyes waited upon him, tense, anxious, pathetically hopeful. And you can see in this illustration that they're staring at him like, "Come up with something, gosh." Chapter 20. "Well, there is something I believe we might try," James Henry Trotter said slowly. "I'm not saying it'll work." "Tell us," cried the earthworm. "Tell us quick." "We'll try anything you say," said the centipede. "But just hurry, hurry, hurry." "Be quiet and let the boys speak," the ladybug said. "Go on, James." They all moved a little closer. There was a longish pause. "Go on," frantically. "Go on." And all the time while they were waiting, they could hear the sharks thrashing about in the water below them. It was enough to make anyone frantic. "Come on, James," the ladybug said, coaxing him. I'm afraid it's no good after all," James murmured, shaking his head. "I'm terribly sorry. I forgot. We don't have any string. We'd need hundreds of yards of string to make this work." "What sort of string?" asked the old green grasshopper sharply. "Any sort, so long as it's strong. But, my dear boy, that's exactly what we do have. We've got all you want." "How? Where?" "The silkworm," cried the old green grasshopper. "Didn't you ever notice the silkworm? She's downstairs. She never moves. She just lies there sleeping all day long, but we can easily wake her up and make her spin." "And what about me, may I ask?" said Miss Spider. "I can spin just as well as any silkworm. What's more, I can spin patterns." "Can you make enough between you?" asked James. "As much as you want." "And quickly?" Of course, of course." "And would it be strong?" "The strongest there is, and as thick as your finger." "But why? What are you going to do?" "I'm going to lift this peach clear out of the water," James announced firmly. "You're mad," cried the earthworm. "It's our only chance." "The boy's joking. He is joking." "Go on, James," the ladybug said gently. "How are you going to do it?" Sky hooks, I suppose. Seagulls, James answered calmly. The place is full of them. Look up there. They all looked up and saw a great mass of seagulls wheeling around and around in the sky. I'm going to take a long silk string, James went on, and I'm going to loop one end of it around a seagull's neck, and then I'm going to tie the other end to the stem of the peach. He pointed to the peach stem, which was standing up like a short, thick mast in the middle of the deck. Then I'm going to get another seagull to do the same thing again, and then another, then another. Ridiculous, they shouted. Absurd, poppycock, balderdash, madness. And the old green grasshopper said, how can a few seagulls lift an enormous thing like this up in the air, and all of us as well? It would take hundreds, thousands. There's no shortage of seagulls, James answered. Look for yourself. We'll probably need 400, 500, 600, maybe even 1,000. I don't know. I shall simply go on hooking them up until the stem, until we have enough to lift us. They're bound to be able to lift us in the end. It's like balloons. If you give someone enough balloons to hold, I mean really enough, then up he goes. And a seagull has far more lifting power than a balloon. If only we have the time to do it. If only we are not sunk first by those awful sharks. You're absolutely off your head, said the earthworm. How on earth do you propose to get a loop of string around a seagull's neck? I suppose you're going to fly up there yourself and do it. The boy's dotty, said the centipede. Let him finish, said the ladybug. Go on, James. How would you do it? With bait. Bait? What sort of bait? With a worm, of course. Seagulls love worms. Didn't you know that? And luckily for us, we have here the biggest, fattest, pinkiest, juiciest earthworm in the world. You can stop right there, the earthworm said sharply. That is quite enough. Go on, the other said, beginning to grow interested. Go on. The seagulls have already spotted him, James continued. That's why there are so many of them circling around. But they daren't come down to get him while all the rest of us are standing here. So this is what... Stop! Cried the earthworm. Stop, stop, stop. I won't have it. I refuse. Be quiet, said the centipede. Mind your own business. I like that, my dear earthworm. You're going to be eaten anyway, so what's the difference? What difference does it make whether it's sharks or seagulls? I won't do it. Why don't we hear what the plan is first, said the old green grasshopper. I don't give a hoot what the plan is, cried the earthworm. I'm not going to be pecked to death by a bunch of seagulls. You will be a martyr, the centipede said. A martyr, boys and girls, is kind of like a person that passes away, who is like a hero, like a martyr. He does something, he dies for a cause. I shall respect you for the rest of my life. So will I, said Miss Spider, and your name will be in all the newspapers. Earthworm gives his life to save friends. But he won't have to give his life, James told them. Now listen to me. This is what we're going to do. Chapter 21. Last chapter for today. Why, it's absolutely brilliant, cried the old green grasshopper when James had explained his plan. The boy's a genius, the centipede announced. Now I can keep my boots on after all. Oh, I shall be pecked to death, wailed the poor earthworm. Of course you won't. I will. I know I will. And I won't even be able to see them coming because I have no eyes. James went over and put an arm gently around the earthworm's shoulders. I won't let them touch you, he said. I promise I won't. But we've got to hurry. Look down there. There were more sharks than ever now at the peach. The water was boiling with them. There must have been 90 or 100 at least. And to the travelers on top, it certainly seemed as though the peach was sinking lower and lower into the water. Action stations, James shouted. Jump to it. There's not a moment to lose. He was the captain now, and everyone knew it. They would do whatever he told them. All hands below deck except Earthworm, he ordered. Yes, yes, they said eagerly as they scuttled into the tunnel entrance. Come on, let's hurry. And you, Centipede, James shouted. Hop downstairs and get that silkworm to work at once. Tell her to spin as she's never spun before. Our lives depend upon it. And the same applies to you, Miss Spider. Hurry down, start spinning. And here's a picture of the earthworm kind of trying to be talked into saving everyone by being bait for the seagulls. And that was the end of chapter 21. I believe we're about halfway through. Let's see. A little bit more than halfway through. There are like 40 chapters. So, Okay. Sorry about the confusion about spring break. Don't be mad at me. But I will make sure to have your other lessons uploaded today. It takes a little bit of time for YouTube. Like I don't know if like so many people are using it or what's going on, but also I dojoed you about having a Zoom dance party. So 3rd grade dance party, you know I'll be there. And I talked to Miss DeVitis, and Miss DeVitis wants to do it too. So if I hear from enough of you, we'll schedule it either for tomorrow or the next day, whenever you guys are available. And I love you. Mwah, stay inside. I miss you. And I will talk to you soon. Bye, guys.